Lesson 3-1C, compare and order rational numbers. So we are comparing fractions, and a good way to compare them is to rewrite them so they have the same denominator. The least common denominator, LCD, of the two fractions is the least common multiple of the two denominators. And it says another way is to compare fractions is to express them as decimals and compare them that way. So sometimes, you know, one way to do one set of fractions might be good, but then for another set of fractions there might be another way. So I'm going to show you a couple different things. So they're starting off by saying which fraction is greater, 3/4 or 4/5. So the first method that they're doing is rewriting them with a common denominator and kind of comparing that way. So you look at your two denominators, so I'm looking at the 4 and the 5, and the least common multiple of 4 and 5 is 20. It's 20. So to rewrite them, you ask yourself, what times 4 gives me 20? Well, it's 5. So 4 times 5 on the bottom, you have to do the same on the top, 3 times 5 on the top. You can't just change the 4 to 20 and then leave the 3 alone. You've got to rewrite the whole thing. So 3/4 becomes 15/20. Now, 4/5, what do you take times 5 to get to 20? Well, that would be times 4. So you multiply times 4 on the bottom and the top, and you get 16/20. So the least common denominator of those two would be 20. You rewrite both fractions, 15/20 and 16/20. Now all you've got to do is compare 15 and 16. Well, that's easy. You know that 15 is less than 16. Now, if I look down here, now that the denominator's the same, you compare, like I said, the numerators. And it says 16/20 is greater than 15/20. So in other words, 4/5 is greater than 3/4. Okay, so we're talking about comparing, and you can change them to a common denominator. We're going to do a couple of problems like that, but I'm going to show you another method that I think you'll like a lot better. First of all, it's talking about find the LCD of each pair of fractions. So if you do have to change them to fractions with common denominator, I want to go through this just a little bit. So number 1, 1/2 and 1/8. I've got a 2 and an 8. What's the lowest number that both of those two divide into? Macy, what is it? 16 is a number they both go into, but it's not actually the lowest one. Macy, what is the first number that 8 divides into? Okay, maybe I asked that incorrect. I didn't ask that well. So if I had to do like a row of multiplications for 8, I would start with 8 times 1. What's 8 times 1? 8. Macy, what's 8 times 1? 8. And then 8 times 2? 16. Okay. But if I do this, I look at 2 and I say, what's the first one of those that 2 divides into, Macy? Does 2 go into 8? Yeah. So 8 is the least common denominator. 8 is the least common denominator. You find the lowest one they both divide into. You want to go with the lowest one so you're not having to multiply such big numbers together. So let's look at this one, 3/4 and 7/10. I want to take my 10 and start thinking of numbers that are multiples of 10 and see if 4 goes into that. So what's 10 times 1? 10. Does 4 divide into 10? All right, what about 10 times 2? 20. Does 4 go into 20?
Yes.
So 20 would be my least common denominator. Does that make sense? Take the bigger of the two numbers and start multiplying by 1, then 2, and so on until you find a number the other one goes into. All right, so let's look at, well, let's see. I made you write the odd ones down, didn't I? So number 5. It says replace each circle with less than, greater than, or equal to make a true sentence. Use a number line if necessary. We're not going to use a number line. We're going to go with rewriting them with a common denominator for a moment. So I've got 5 and 10. What is, Dylan, my least common denominator?
10.
So 10. Okay, we're going to do it just like that. Now, Dylan, 8/10, it's just going to stay 8/10, right?
Yeah.
But for the 4/5, Dylan, 5 times what is 10?
2.
2. So 4 times 2 is going to be what?
8.
8. So now inside the circle, Dylan, 8/10 compared to 8/10, am I going to put less than, greater than, or equal to?
Equal to.
Definitely equal to. Definitely equal to. Okay, let's do this one. 1/2 and 5/9. Eli, what's the common denominator? 18. So we're going to write them both with 18. Now, Eli, 2 times what is 18? 9. So I have to take 1 times 9 for the numerator. What is that? 1 times 9? 9. And over on the right, 9 times what is 18? 2. So I've got to do 5 times 2. And what is that? 10. So Eli, 9/18 compared to 10/18. Is 9/18 less than, greater than, or equal to? It is less than. So in this circle, you'd put less than. I should have come up here. That should be equal to. Okay, let's look at number 9. -5/7 and -6/11. We got to be careful because it's on the negative side of the number line. So out of 7 and 11, what's my common denominator, Mason? 77. 77. And we're comparing negatives. So Mason, on the left, 7 times what is 77? 11. So what's 5 times 11? 55. And then on the other side, 11 times what is 77? 7. So 6 times 7 is 42. Now be careful, we're on the negative side, Mason. -55/77 compared to -42/77. Is -55 less than, greater than, or equal to? You're correct. Less than. Okay, we're going to do number 11, and then I want to show you another method. So these are mixed numbers. Now the thing about the mixed numbers, that 4 part, they're even at the whole number part. They're both 4. So I really only need to compare the fractional part. So let's think about 9/10 and 3/5. What is the common denominator of 9/10 and 3/5? What's it going to be, Jacob? 10. So we're just going to deal with the 10 part. And Jacob, the 9/10 on the left, what do I do with that? It stays the same. Good. And the one on the right, the 5 times what is 10? 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. And Jake, so am I going to say 4 and 9/10 compared to 4 and 6/10? Is it less than, greater than, or equal to? 9/10 compared to 6/10. It's greater than. It's greater than. Okay, any questions about that? I'm going to show you a trick, and I think you might like it better than what we just did. Here's a trick. I'm going to use my 4/5 and 8/10. Let me bring that. I'm going to write it again. Now, it's going to be really important that you do this exactly this way. I'm going to do a crisscross. I'm going to go 4 down to 10, and I'm going to write 4 times 10. What is that? 40. And then I'm going to go from 5 up to 8 and go 5 times 8. What is that? 40 and 40. It's the same, right? So that means that these two are equal, which isn't that what we said over here?
Yeah.
Okay.
We tried this last year, but some got hit.
Okay, let's try the 1/2 and 5/9. So we're talking about this one right here. I'm going to do 1/2 and 5/9, but you got to do it exactly in this order. So from 1 down to 9, what's 1 times 9? 9. And 2 up to 5, what's 2 times 5? So how does 9 compare to 10? Less than, so it should be less than, and isn't that what we said? Okay, so let's look at this one over here, number 4. If I start at the top, 1 down to 8, 1 times 8, what is that? 8. And then 2 up to 3, 2 times 3, what is that? 6. So how does 8 compare to 6? Greater than. So it should be 1/2 is greater than 3/8. Let's try number 6. 3 down to 8. 3 times 8. What is that? 24. Okay. 4 up to 7. 4 times 7. What is that? 28. And how does 24 compare to 28? So then 3/4 is less than 7/8. So you tried to do that last year, you just didn't do well with it, huh? Okay. Well, if you do that and you keep them in the right order and start from the top on the left down to the right for the left side, and the bottom on the left up to the right for the right side, it will get you the right answer every time.
That's easy.
If you're not sure about it, then change them to a common denominator, and that is a surefire. That's for sure. You'll get it that way. But you can also do that cross multiplication. Are there any questions?